You must know a way. Some magic.
There is a spell. Some would say death is cleaner.
Look to your sins, Lord Renly. The night is dark and full of terrors.
What's the deal, my people? You know it is Don Tony Teflon, and I'm back at you another one, and this one is, why is Melisandre so frightened, or should we say concerned, about Patchface? Now, we know that Patchface is most likely the creepiest person in all of Game of Thrones, and that is saying something because we know that we have a lot of creepy people in Game of Thrones, so to say that this is the creepiest person is saying something in itself. Now, this is a character that did not appear in the show, so if you did not see him, if you're just a show person, first let me tell you exactly the backstory on Patchface, then we're going to go into some book things, and then we're going to talk about exactly what Melisandre means by this and what this vision is. Patchface, known as Patches to Shireen Baratheon, was a justice slave in Volantis. He was a clever boy with astonishing wit. His freedom was bought by Lord Stefan Baratheon, who was impressed with him and intended to bring him back to Storm's End from his trip from the Free Cities. Unfortunately, with Stannis Baratheon and Robert watching his father's ship about to pull into Shipbreaker's Bay, tragedy struck and the ship sank, killing their father, their mother, and over 100 soldiers and sailors. 3 days later, Patchface was found, naked, skin wrinkled, and pale white. The person who found him swore to his dying day that he believed that he was dead because his skin was cold and clammy. It wasn't until he coughed up water that they knew that he was still alive. The ordeal had taken his memory and half his wit. Now he's subject to twitches and trembles and says the most incoherent riddles. What happened to him during those 2 days is unknown, but the fisherfolk like to say a mermaid had taught him how to breathe underwater and return for his seed. Patchface takes his name from the tattoos covering his face and bald head, marked with a pattern of green and red squares. This is the fashion in the free city of Volantis for slaves and servants. That is the background of Patchface, and as we can see, even with his origin story, he's a creepy little dude going down here. Now, we have heard them say in Game of Thrones many a times, only death can pay for life. And it seems that the death of Stannis Baratheon's parents and these ship people may have paid for Patchface's life. Now, I will explain this and everything else about Patchface as I come back around, but when dealing with this Melisandre vision that she says she has about Patchface. But before I do, if you can, please subscribe, click that bell so you can be notified every time I drop a new Game of Thrones or another type of video. Now let's get to exactly the quote from the books that Melisandre said. Melisandre's face darkened. That creature is dangerous. Many a time I have glimpsed him in my flames. Sometimes there are skulls about him, and his lips are red with blood. Now, this is a very ominous statement by Melisandre, but let's try to unpack it the best we can. First, she says that creature is dangerous. Like, she doesn't even recognize him as a human being. She sees him as something else. Something as if like the others or something like that. She's not recognizing the man as a human being. Unless she's just looking down upon him because he's a court jester. That would be the only thing I could see her saying that for. But I believe it's because she doesn't recognize him as a human being. Next, she says many times I have glimpsed him in my flames. So not just once, many times, somehow Patchface keeps turning up in her flames. Now, we've seen that Melisandre is the best, it says, at reading the flames, but she does not interpret them the right way. Next, she says there's sometimes there are skulls about him and his lips are red with blood. Now, that is what we're going to be focusing on, those last two things. But before we do, we're going to deal with the first line. Now, she says that creature is dangerous. She calls him a creature. If we look at how he was found and everything that happened to him when he got into the accident on the boat and survived at sea for all those days, it does seem that he is some type of creature. Now, if you want to say he's a sea creature, or he became a sea creature, or that he has some type of supernatural powers, that's why he was able to survive, that is all feasible. But I will go towards a person that we've seen in the book do just about the same thing. And by doing this, it also ties into the next line, why she sees him in her flames all the time. The fact that she does see him all the time in the flames means that he is of some importance. That means something big is going to happen around him or about him, and she glimpses him in the flames. So, what is the person, or who is the person that did almost the exact same thing that Patchface did? Well, that is Moqorro. In A Dance with Dragons, chapter 56, Victorian Greyjoy is right outside of Slaver's Bay. He was sent to find Daenerys Targaryen by King Euron Greyjoy, his brother, and to command the Iron Fleet. While he did it, grab Dany up and then bring her back to him. Instead, Victorian plans on taking Daenerys as his own bride and then overthrowing Euron Greyjoy. Now, before stationing right here, Victorian's shield hand was hurt fighting in the Battle of the Shield Isles, and his wound has since festered. Now, his maester had little success on treating this wound ever since it got bad. Now, during this whole voyage, his fleet had got separated many times, and the 54th ship to arrive happened to have a red priest on it named Moqorro. Moqorro was swept overboard and then was found by this ship. Now, after surviving days at sea, Moqorro says to Victorian that he had seen in his flames that if he did not treat his wound, that he would die. So Victorian Greyjoy allows him to treat his wound, and he does in fact heal it. Even though he does heal it, Victorian's arm is not the same. It is now a burnt, charred wreck of an arm, but in that state, it's still 3 times stronger than it used to be. Now, after he does this, Victorian then has his maester executed. So let's look at some of the similarities that we see here from Moqorro and Patchface. First and foremost, we see that they both were able to survive at sea for a very long time. Now, other similarities are this. His appearance is the exact opposite of Patchface. Moqorro's skin is as black as pitch, darker than coal or jet. He is over 6 feet tall with wild white hair, and we know that Patchface is extremely short. When he was found, he was pitch white, and he has no hair whatsoever, while Moqorro has wild white hair. Also, Moqorro has facial tattoos of flames that are on his face that appear to change color depending who's looking at it. Because Tyrion Lannister, the person he was with before the ship capsized and he fell over, said that his flames were yellow and orange, while Victorian says that his flames are red and orange. Now, this is either them changing color, or it could be something the author put in there, who knows. But he has tattoos of flames on his face, and we know Patchface also has tattoos on his face. Now, while Patchface survived a few days at sea before he was found, Moqorro was out there for 10 full days. And before he left, he knew that this was going to happen to him. He knew he was going to fall overboard, and he knew that he would be picked up by Victorian Greyjoy. He's seen all that in his flames, yet he still did this. So why Victorian Greyjoy is in Moqorro's company, he makes sacrifices to 2 gods, the Drowned God, and he makes sacrifices to the Red God. But Moqorro says that the Drowned God is nothing but a thrall of the Great Other. So we see 2 people that are about to drown, and both were saved. How were they saved? We exactly don't know. There's not a lot of proof to it. But one has something to do with the Red God and seeing things in the flames, and another one is seen in the flames by another Red Priest, or priestess if you want to call her that. So this has to have something to do with the Red God and the Drowned God also. So it's 2 gods, and he's not the only person that's being protected by what they think is 2 different deities. Now, Patchface is at the wall and she keeps seeing him over and over again. That means something special happens around Patchface. Now, she also says that she sees him sometime he has skulls around him. Now, when skulls around someone, that means death is around this person, or this person is about to commit some type of death. Now, we can take those two things and tie them into Melisandre: death and fire. And what is that? That is the burning of Shireen. In the book, Shireen is Patchface's friend. She is probably the only friend Patchface truly has, and he is probably her only friend. That is why she nicknamed him Patches. Now, we have seen in the show that Melisandre does burn Shireen. One of the worst scenes I've ever seen in television history. It's still very hard for me to watch that scene in its entirety. Now, in the books, it is impossible for this scene to play out exactly how it did on the television show, but I do believe that Melisandre will at least attempt to burn Shireen Baratheon, and I do believe that she will be successful when this happens. Now, at the wall, there are wildlings there, and these wildlings do not like Shireen because she has grayscale, especially one wildling named Val. And this is the conversation she has with Jon Snow about Shireen up at the wall. The maesters may believe what they wish. Ask a wood's wish if you want to know the truth. The gray death sleeps, only to wake again. The child is not clean. She seems a sweet child. You cannot know. I can't. You know nothing, Jon Snow. Val seized his arm. I want the monster out of there. Him and his wet nurses. You cannot leave them in that same tower as the dead girl. So Val already believes that Shireen is a dead girl, right? So if she was with Melisandre and Melisandre said, hey, let's burn this girl, she would probably do it. Now, we have to remember that there's a good chance that Jon Snow will still be dead when all this happens. So they could just overtake the mother, Val, and she may be down with Melisandre and agree to burn Shireen because she does not like her already because of the grayscale. Now, if that does take place in front of Patchface, I could see Patchface losing his mind, trying to prevent this from happening. Or if he sees Shireen get burned, he will lose his mind, and then that is why I believe that the blood would be found in his mouth. Now, further proof that there will be a child sacrifice burnt by Melisandre is that fact that Jon Snow had Gilly take Mance Rayder's baby with her and Sam and left Gilly's child at the wall. And the reason why he did this was he was scared that Melisandre would try to burn this child because it had king's blood. So that brings us back to why Melisandre's face darkens and why she's somewhat afraid of Patchface. And why does she see him in the flames multiple times with skulls around him and his lips are red with blood. Now, I have given you clues throughout this whole thing to exactly what I think is going on here with Patchface, but I will give you the last thing that I think you need to know about this to truly see exactly what happens, and that is the Vlad Sixskins chapter. Now, in the Vlad Sixskins chapter, we learn about warging. That's basically what the chapter is for, to teach us about warging, what's good to warg and what's not good to warg, right? But during that chapter, when he's about to die, he has a companion with him named Thistle. And while he's about to die, he does try to take over her body. Now, during this chapter, we learn that taking over another person's body is the worst thing that can be done by a warger or skin changer. That's the worst. There's nothing worse than that. That is frowned upon even by other people who have this ability. They all frown upon this act to be able to take over somebody's body, and they're called abominations, these people who do that. Now, she fights him off, and then he decides after that to go into a wolf. But while she fights him off, she bites down on her own tongue, and her mouth starts to bleed, and she has red blood all over her mouth at this particular time, and she scratches away at her face. Her face basically becomes a weirwood tree, which is very ironic because we know that Vlad was trying to warg her, so that's why they did that. But then after this, Vlad, while he is inside of the wolf, he sees Thistle, and her eyes turn blue, and the blood on her lips starts to freeze, and then he realizes that she can see him in that form. The same exact thing that happened to Thistle is what's going to happen to Patchface. All the way through, when you first look at Patchface, you see his form. He's very white. He's pale white. That's how they find him. They say that they thought that he was dead. There's a reason why they have that, and they say that. It's because that is what he is going to become when it's all said and done. When you see the blood on Thistle's mouth that looks like a weirwood tree because he was being warged, that's exactly what was happening to Patchface all the time. That's why he had all these visions all the time, because they were being sent to him. Now the Red God, you want to say, sends visions through the flames, but I don't believe so. I think that it's always the Children of the Forest, Blood Raven, or Bran, whoever you want to say, sending messages that are being interpreted as being sent by the Red God, but there is no Red God. It's all being sent by Children of the Forest, Bran, or Blood Raven, whoever you want to say. So how I believe it plays out is Shireen will begin to get burnt. Patchface will lose his mind. He will then be warged by Bran. Now we know that it's easy for them to warg people who are not that smart, who have mental issues. That's what's going to happen. While he's going crazy, the whites will attack the wall and break through. Patchface will be killed, and then he will be resurrected as a white, and then Bran will lose control of him when that happens. And Melisandre has seen all this in her flames, yet she cannot interpret it right because she never does that right. But that is what the blood is around the mouth, and that is why there are skulls all around him. And that is why she refers to him as a creature, because that's what he becomes, a creature, a white. But you tell me in the comment section what you think. Do you have a different idea for Patchface or a different idea for that prophecy? I would like to hear it. Please put it in the comment section. And if you would like to know exactly what every one of Patchface riddles mean, let me know in the comment section, and I'll do another Patchface video just talking about that. Please subscribe to Teflon TV and the Lady and the Dom podcast. The link will be in the description. And until next time, you know who it is. Peace and stay sexy.